Hey, good morning, guys. All right. Good morning, Tinder users. Funny, Patrick, I don't know if you're still in this room, but he mentioned that friends were asking him if it's safe to come down to Malaysia or not, right, for Wild Digital. I told him that, the conference is not called Tame Digital. Like in Malaysia, things get a little bit wild, right? So it's definitely going to be a riot. So you guys should definitely come down. Now, not to let those down, the people who actually listen to me, I'll make sure that I can see if the slides are showing up. Yeah, that's how wild it is. You guys got my slides up, or is the Q thing not working? Aha, it's come in. Ooh, okay, raise the head. Okay, so I'm gonna dive into. I think Patrick talked a lot about the disruptive opportunities which exist in Southeast Asia. I'm gonna go one step closer. We're gonna take a closer look at this. So to kind of shorten the lingo, a lot of us are familiar now, with the term unicorn. Every entrepreneur who's building a company wants to build a unicorn. Every investor who wants to invest in a company, they want to invest in a unicorn. Unicorns are popularly known as privately held companies with over $1 billion in valuation. Currently, Fortune, CB Insights, and Wall Street Journal, they track unicorns separately, and all of them have more or less around 130 companies they listed as unicorns. Now, with these unicorns, though, all of us, in some way or another, we're here at Wild Digital because we're trying to farm, we're trying to source, we're trying to hunt for these unicorn opportunities. So let's have a look where we might be able to find them. Now, so first off, what I want to ask us, the crowd, though, is that do you guys think that a lot of these 130 companies are overvalued? Who thinks these unicorn lists is right now overvalued? Okay, a couple of hands in the room. Who thinks they're undervalued? They're actually kind of worth more than $1 billion. Not too many, except for that dude. You're probably building one. Well, I would say that, may I frame the question a little bit differently? Are today's unicorns overvalued in the same way companies were overvalued in the year 2000? Well, that's actually a very popular argument. A lot of people feel like an adjustment's coming, but we're in the midst of a bubble because there's 130 companies worth more than $1 billion valuation, and their profits may not suggest, may not correlate positively. But what I'd also like to show is that in 2015, the world is very, very different from the year 2000. This is just a simple stat, but people tend to forget that in the year 2000, we only have 316 million internet users. Today, we've got 3.17 billion internet users. That's 10 times more internet users today. So if you had an overvalued company in the year 2000 and you had an overvalued company today, my argument is that in the year 2000, companies were way overvalued. Today, time will tell. In Southeast Asia, a lot of the past 15 years, we've described Southeast Asia as an emerging market. But if your business does not target rural villages, and your business primarily targets people in cities, you have to evaluate the Southeast Asian market by city data. And when you do that, you'll see there are 54 million people living in Southeast Asian major cities. Now, this 54 million, I'm talking about Manila, Jakarta, Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi, Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, and Singapore. You add that up, there's 54 million people living in a major city. That's 5.4 times the size of Seoul, and that's 67 times the size of San Francisco, and that's 40% more than all of California put together. Now, why do I talk about city data? Because as a venture capitalist myself, I evaluate bottom-up market sizing, not from macro data of Southeast Asia, because again, a lot of the businesses I invest in are not specifically targeted at rural farmers. No, we with all due respect and love for them, of course, but they're primarily targeting people who live in cities. And why? And for people who live in cities, if you talk about credit card penetration, online shopping habits, if you talk about smartphone penetration, internet speeds, and all the macro markers, you'll see that people who live in the cities, all of them have a very high penetration rate, equivalent to most metropolitan cities in the world. So Southeast Asia has emerged as a large enough market size to build big companies. So much so that a lot of the usage in these cities actually surpassed that of emerged markets, or rather developed markets, from social media usage, time spent, all the way to online shoppers. There's 87 million online shoppers in Southeast Asia, and by two different studies, mobile phones are more popular for online shopping in ASEAN than across the globe. There's 54% of people in Southeast Asia have used online shopping in the past 3 months, and that's more than 44% average for the rest of the world. Now, these are just, there's a lot of quick stats to show you that if you just look at city data and you look at some current data, you'll see that Southeast Asia is not an emerging market, it has already emerged. So if you correlate the first idea that there are 130 companies which are already worth $1 billion US, and you look at a market of 54 million people in Southeast Asia who are ready to use these businesses, you can make an argument that a lot of these business models are getting cloned and copied at an unprecedented rate. For us, we see this every day. I've been with 500 for almost 2 years now. Now, 500 Startups is a Silicon Valley-based venture capital firm. We're the most active venture capital firm in the entire world. We have invested in 1,200 seed companies in 50 countries. And right now, we have 3 unicorns in our stable, 25 centaurs, which we label our $100 million+ companies, and 250 to 300 My Little Ponies, right, which we call our up-and-coming unicorns to be. By doing a lot of this, we've also kind of rallied, we've also spread a lot of the knowledge we have from Silicon Valley to different parts of the world. So much so that Stanford partnered with us to do a course on seed investing globally, all the way to New York Times and Wall Street Journal working with us on pieces on investing in global markets. Me specifically, I've been taking care of the Southeast Asia portfolio, and I care a lot about what business models exist around the world that we can replicate in Southeast Asia. This is what I care about a lot. Now, I've invested in 50 companies in the past 12 months. They're spread across enterprise, software as a service, all the way to e-commerce, marketplace, and so on and so forth. The approach I have, right, and which I'll share with you today, is it's a very quick survey of the real-time unicorns which exist. So for the purpose of today's discussion, I'm zooming in on using CB Insights data because they're the only list which is updated in real time. So I take a real-time list of all the unicorns. I ask myself, for this unicorn, is the competition in Southeast Asia too mature for it? Do the local market conditions exist to build this unicorn? I ask these 2 questions. And with the combination of these 3 points of data, I start highlighting on my list different unicorn companies, and those which I've already invested in, I just put a brighter green. And those who I've not invested in, they are of course that don't have the bright green, and I go hunting for them or at least try to evaluate them a bit closer. So local examples of foreign unicorns which I've invested in the local equivalent. So I've invested in Grab Taxi. And we can probably reference them in reference to Uber. Zomato, I've invested in Craved in Indonesia. ZocDoc, we've invested in DocDoc out of Singapore. And for Slack, we've invested in Echo, and they've just raised $5 million US from Gobi. Credit Karma is one of our unicorns within the 500 stable. Credit Karma is valued at $3.5 billion US right now, and so we invested in a Southeast Asian equivalent called iMoney. Instacart is about $2.5 billion. We invested in the local equivalent called Happy Fresh, and the list goes on. This process is simple, we just update this every couple of weeks, and I'm sure a lot of you within your firms have had similar analysis. So one thing I do avoid, though, is that it's easy to look at this list and say, whoa, there's a lot of e-commerce companies there. But some of these unicorn spaces in Southeast Asia are very competitive. This is a slide showing the top 5 shopping sites by traffic across Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, and Malaysia. From B2C marketplaces to B2C multi-brand retailers to flash sales, private sales, daily deals, to marketplaces and classifieds. 55% of these top 5 in each of these verticals are foreign-owned. 14% of them are already acquired through acquisitions or through joint ventures. So the e-commerce and marketplace space, while you can find a lot of good niches to conquer, I would say relative to a lot of other spaces, they're very, very competitive. Now, I'm going to go into 5 specific spaces I'm looking at. Some of them are maybe more obvious. Some of them may be not obvious at all until we look at the data. You guys ready for this? Okay, first one. Out of my selection of 5 Southeast Asian unicorn opportunities, the first one. Peer-to-peer lending. In today's unicorn list, we have 14 unicorns and 10 centaurs, which are unicorns to be, are actually in the lending and peer-to-peer lending space. Here we've got, of course, some Chinese peer-to-peer lenders on the far right. On the far left, we've got some American peer-to-peer lending platforms. Peer-to-peer lending, what does it mean? It means like everyday folks like us, we're going on a website and we're putting money into a website to fund somebody else's loan. We're funding, peer-to-peer lenders are funding small businesses all the way to e-commerce companies to people who just want to refactor their credit card debt. People who want to buy a house, saving up for a wedding, all kinds of stuff. Think of it like crowdfunding, but crowd loaning in a way. Now, while the world has a lot of references for billion-dollar unicorn peer-to-peer lending companies, Southeast Asia is not as easy. I've looked at a lot of deals in Southeast Asia, and of course, each country is very different in terms of legality. But there are some things which make the US a prime place for peer-to-peer lending, like high credit card debt. A lot of people are maxing out their credit cards, and when they go on peer-to-peer sites, they're using this money to just to pay off credit card debt. Southeast Asia, maybe not so much. People may need to borrow for different reasons. So I have not found one yet. If you guys find anyone, let's do this deal together. We co-invest and build some in this space. The next unicorn opportunity is payments related. Some may argue like, oh, isn't PayPal already kicking ass? Isn't Stripe here in Southeast Asia? Don't banks already do it? I mean, there are a lot of payment companies. That's what I thought. But when you look at the unicorn list, there are 15 unicorns and 7 centaurs on companies which are payments related. And they're doing things that you think PayPal should be doing. But they're not. Payments broadly, we're looking at helping somebody pay something to their friend, helping small businesses pay their customers, helping merchants, small business merchants, right, accept payments from consumers. There's still a lot of companies related to payments which have not been built yet. And so in Southeast Asia specifically, if you talk to any of your friends how they're transferring money to each other or how they're paying for things online, you'll see that the space is even wider. So this is a space which I've invested in a few companies and look forward to invest in more in, payments-related companies. The third one is enterprise services, especially if it gets more software as a service. Right now, 2 of the fastest growing unicorns on the list. We've got Slack and we've got Zenefits. At the same time, we've got a lot of ex-unicorns, unicorns which already went public very quickly, like Workday, Marketo, and ServiceNow. Like these companies, if you go into a lot of the Southeast Asian conglomerates or even small businesses and you talk to what software they're using, a lot of them are still using Microsoft Excel, they're using papers, they're using a lot of old school stuff to get stuff done. And instead of having a large sales team to go each and every one of them and convince them to use new software, you don't need to do that. I'll tell you a quick story about my experience when I was building Sales.com. What happened was that my finance colleague, right, her name's Florence, she came up to me one day and she said, hey, Khailee, so many of your staff, they're claiming this Dropbox. What is it? All their claims, got Dropbox, but I don't see any boxes anywhere. I'm like, oh, Dropbox is a cloud storage thing, why are they inserting all of these claims? So I go talk to my staff, they say, oh, Khailee, we're using Dropbox because we're putting all our work files or sharing it with our clients. And then so if you reflect on a situation like this, no one spoke to the CIO or got clearance from procurement, right, to get Dropbox implemented throughout the organization, It just crept its way in. Next thing you know, we're paying about $3,000 US a year to Dropbox, right? We're not even that big of a company at the time. Now, more and more, a lot of this opportunity exists in Southeast Asia. You just have to adapt it, internationalize it, give it a local layer of support, and you can build some pretty big companies in enterprise space. However, a lot of enterprise companies that I've seen, they target a niche, like a very specific vertical. I think to build a very large unicorn, the use case of the enterprise company you're building or investing has to be something that every company needs, not just a certain sub-segment of companies. If you look at Slack is communication. Zenefits is HR and benefits. If you look at the rest of these things, it's something that every company would need to use. So that's one caveat for the third one. Now I've got 2 more before I wrap up. The fourth one is related to on-demand revolution. Over here, this slide was from Mary Meeker's report, but she painted on-demand companies serving transportation, dining, food, groceries, delivery, and on-demand of all kinds of tasks, showing how these services get to your doorstep and you're served within minutes. Although this looks like a site that says, okay, great, a lot of $100 million to $1 billion companies here in the on-demand space, I'll tell you that if you live in, say, Bangsar in Malaysia today, you can have a lot of the equivalent services that you'd have in the United States. So of course, we invested in Grab Taxi and Craved. But that aside, we've all invested in a lot of the other on-demand spaces. And for food, we're in the selection process of some deals. So my take is the mobile revolution in Southeast Asia is just ripe for the on-demand revolution. And there's going to be some good companies to be found here. So last but not least, right, there's one more trend right after this that I want to share. But like on the on-demand services, there's a new one driven by SMS, where you're just basically asking for anything, whether you're signing up SMS, asking questions, buying anything, on-demand delivery, book flights just by SMS. A lot of small startups, a lot of small fishes are doing this. But what you'll also see is that Microsoft launched this business in China in a very big way, and Facebook just launched it in San Francisco for pilot as well. So I think there's some opportunity here. Now, the last trend before I wrap up is there's media unicorns waiting to be built in Southeast Asia. Media specifically is particularly local. You need to have a local flavor, local teams, and local adaptation to build a big local media company. And globally, you've got Vice valued at $2.5 billion and BuzzFeed valued at $1.5 billion. You know, had I known all of this, I wouldn't have sold Says.com to Patrick, you know. But I already have, you know, and he put that together. Patrick had more foresight than I did. You know, he looped it together with a few other fast-growing media companies, and he built Rev Asia. Tomorrow, Rev Asia will be presenting as well. So I think there is space for companies in media to become a unicorn. Now, to wrap up, I would say that there's a supply and demand side equation to create unicorns. A lot of the supply side, a long time ago, you got techies and fresh grads coming to build unicorns. But these days, you've got expat, corporate warriors, and a lot of SMEs wanting to build it. And last but not least, on the demand side, to build Southeast Asian unicorns, we need investors like you. So I hope this has been useful to you. And for the rest of the conference, we're going to talk all about unicorns and building these billion-dollar opportunities in Southeast Asia. Thank you.